Text describing a brief history of the nobles and the noblesse appears at the start of the ONA. A coffin is then shown being fished out of the water. There are gunshot sounds while the scene is black. A man is on a call after he stole the coffin, having been unable to open it, and leaves. As the full moon shines upon the coffin, Rizel awakens. Mr. Fedor, Mr. Park, walks away after closing the Yi Ran gates when the morning bell rings. Tashiro Shinwoo arrives late and sees Rizel after he changes his clothing to the Yi Ran uniform. Tashiro doesn't recognize Rizel, but in the time it takes to think about that, Rizel has already opened the gate and entered, leaving Tashiro behind. In the principal's office, Frankenstein senses a presence and opens his door, kneeling to greet his master, Rizel. It's revealed that Rizel has been asleep for 820 years, and Frankenstein then explains the building they're in is a school. Rizel decides to enroll. In class, Rizel introduces himself. Tashiro recognizes him and gains the other students' animosity when Rizel is made to sit next to him. He cries comedically when noticing that Emi Yuna is also enamored by Rizel. The man who found the coffin is turned into an infected by M24 in order to look through his memories. M21 and M24, upon learning he was telling the truth about the coffin disappearing, decide to go after their only lead, the glimpse of Emi in the infected's memories. They're in a rush as the Union will be after them soon. At lunch, Tashiro treats Rizel to ramen. Rizel assumes Manabu, Akon, and Tashiro are trying to kill him as he mistakes the disposable chopsticks as steaks and the kimchi as garlic, but that doesn't stop him from eating. After school, the three are walking home together when they hear a scream. Tashiro runs off towards it, throwing his bag at Manabu. Emi is being physically assaulted by the infected when Tashiro arrives, kicking him into some debris. Manabu and Rizel arrive right after, just in time for everyone to see the infected still alive after pulling a pipe out of his neck. The children run, Rizel following after glancing at where M21 and M24 were hidden. They come to a stop at a park where Emi thanks Tashiro, as well as Rizel, whom she calls Rai, which catches on with the other two. When they ask where Rizel lives, he pulls out a picture of Frankenstein that has his number on the back. As M21 and M24 are discussing going after Emi, Jake and Mari arrive. They question why the two haven't been reporting, as well as who the infected is. As they take charge, M21 has a flashback to Jake killing one of his fellow M-Series members. Later, when the rest of the M-Series are already dead, M21 and M24 decide to find the coffin and thus the noblesse in order to escape the Union. The infected Jake and Mari cause a massacre at a hospital. The next day at school, the students are talking about the massacre. Later that day, M21 and M24 see the children and Rizel. Once more, Rizel looks at them, shocking M21. Jake and Mari interrupt, deciding to kidnap the children as they are witnesses that must be removed. While the children are walking home, Jake appears, but before he can do anything to them, M21 quickly knocks them out, using Rizel being missing as an excuse. At Frankenstein's house, Rizel describes the experience of losing in a first-person shooter game. He also says that he enjoys school. Frankenstein then gets a message from Tashiro, which is revealed to be by Jake with the infected then destroying Tashiro's phone. Jake lets the infected prey on the children against M21 protest through a communicator as he is away with Mari. Tashiro fights back to protect his friends. Frankenstein and Rizel are on their way searching for the children, while Jake kills the infected. He then chases after the children, who run into an elevator. The doors close, but Jake stops it, prying them open. As Tashiro fights back, being beaten up, and tries to stop Jake from hurting Emi and Manabu, M24 is reminded of his own comrade from the M-Series who did the same thing. This leads to him attacking Jake and destroying his own communicator. Elsewhere, M21 is attacked and wounded by Mari, who says the Union already knew they were up to something. This starts the fights between Jake and M24 and Mari and M21. M24 sacrifices himself to take Jake out while M21 is completely outmatched by Mari. Before she can kill him, Frankenstein interferes. Rizel arrives as well. M21 answers where the children are, telling them to go as he fights Mari. Rizel tells Frankenstein to fight instead so that M21 can lead him. Jake is still alive and seemingly uninjured. Before he can hurt the children further, Rizel arrives. So does M21, who attacks Jake, learning that M24 has died and is beat up. Mari struggles against Frankenstein, leading her to transform. Rizel gives Frankenstein permission to break his seal due to the power of their enemies. With Dark Spear, Frankenstein defeats Mari easily, also revealing vaguely that her modification started with him. Jake goes for Rizel next to everyone's concern. Using mind control, Rizel makes Jake kneel, causing M21 to realize that he's the noblesse. Jake transforms, but he's still easily dealt with by Rizel, who also uses his powers to make the children unconscious. Rizel then uses Bloodfield to kill Jake, only leaving behind a single monstrous hand. An unnamed soldier is talking to his base, telling them he's the only survivor of his combat unit before his contact is cut off and he is killed by Krantz. Several survivors are trying to escape when they are killed by Hammer and Shark. Watching from his base, Tao tells the group the target they're looking for isn't at that location and sends Takeo to intercept. Takeo takes out the soldiers easily and apprehends the target. Shark and Hammer are complaining that they weren't satisfied killing all those people and were hoping for more action. Krantz tells them to stop complaining and informs his team that they have a new mission and they're to head to Japan. In Japan, we see Rizel staring up at the full moon, standing outside on the balcony. Tashiro, Shinwoo, and Manabu Akan are walking to school in the morning and are surprised to see a new guard. The two greet M21, and after he inquires about Tashiro's arm, he explains that he got into a car accident protecting Manabu. Frankenstein and Rizel are watching events from his office. In a flashback, M21 tells them about the Union and about the rest of the M-series experiments, and also gives them further information on Jake and Mari. He explains that he is the only survivor and expresses regret at not being able to save his comrade. Frankenstein states he is free to stay with him if he needs a place to stay and offers him a job at his school. Back to the present, Rizel tells Frankenstein he is ready, and Frankenstein opens his desk drawer wondering if his master is going to try what he suggested last night. Rizel enters the classroom and heads towards Tashiro and Manabu. He stares at Tashiro's cast for a while before taking out a pen and drawing a cute cat on it. Frankenstein sits in his office wondering if his master is enjoying himself. Tashiro uses his phone and takes a picture of what's written on Mr. Fedor's Mr. Park blackboard. At lunch, Rizel is waiting for his ramen to grow when he overhears a student on the phone tell his parents he'll be late since he's hanging out with a friend after school. At the end of the day, the students are heading home. Manabu asks Rizel if he'd like to come over to his house, but then they remember he lives with a director and doesn't have a phone. Rizel meets with Frankenstein and M21 on the roof of the school and tells him about his day. He tells him about the children having something he lacks, and after dropping several hints, Frankenstein realizes he's talking about a mobile phone. Frankenstein tells him that he'll get one for him as soon as possible. The next day at school, M21 is greeting students at the gate when Tashiro calls him an old man, making M21 cringe. In the classroom, they notice Rizel has a smartphone and Manabu teaches him how to use it. Rizel sends an email to Frankenstein, which makes Frankenstein happy. M21 is watching the students play in the courtyard, and the janitor approaches him and tells him the school is a great place and speaks highly of the director. A car swerves into the courtyard, almost running over a few students. A gang starts harassing the students, looking for Tashiro. M21 notices the incident and wants to help but is reluctant because he's keeping a low profile. The janitor steps in to tell the leader that vehicles aren't permitted here and that he should leave. Having had enough, the leader breaks the janitor's broom and is about to punch him when Tashiro steps in. The man is angry because Tashiro apparently made a move on his girlfriend. Tashiro successfully avoids a few attacks by the man before a blow lands. M21 is still unsure about stepping in when he senses Rizel behind him. He wonders why Rizel is staring at him like that as the man continues to attack Tashiro. Getting up, Tashiro manages to land a blow before being knocked back. The janitor steps in a second time, and the guy picks him up by the scruff of the neck when M21 approaches, telling him to let the janitor go. The man attempts to punch M21, who avoids the attack and grabs him by the chain he's wearing. M21 doesn't budge when the man tries to get up and instead flings him against the bonnet of another car. He kneels next to the man and tells him if no one was watching, he'd be dead. The man tells his gang they're leaving, and they all get in their car and take off. Later in the evening, M21 is standing on the balcony and recalls his past. He wishes for an ordinary life and remembers the promise he made to find their names. Frankenstein approaches him and mentions he heard what happened at the school. M21 apologizes and Frankenstein tells him to restrain himself so as to not kill anyone. Frankenstein goes and talks with his master, stating he understands his decision to let him stay with him. M21, still on the balcony, looks out at the night sky and swears to keep his promise. On a rooftop in Japan, DA5 are discussing their mission of investigating Jake and Mari's deaths, as well as looking into the disappearance of 2 failed experiments. We see Syra Jake lawyered and Regis K. Landiger looking out across the city. Regis and Syra investigate one of the most recent incidents that were covered up in news reports as a psycho causing the damage, since from what they can see, it is far beyond a mere human's capabilities. Regis elaborates that this is something they must handle in their own way and that the humans cannot control it. The two appear at school in uniforms, demanding for M21 to take them to the one in charge. Frankenstein wonders what Regis and Syra are doing there and dismisses M21 to leave the room. Regis attempts to control Frankenstein, who recognizes this power to be similar to Reisel's. Regis dictates they will be transfer students, and they need the necessary arrangements. Frankenstein realizes that the pair in front of him have no idea that he is not an ordinary human and plays along with their demands. Toshiro is assigned to take care of Regis and Syra. Regis notices that Reisel has an abnormal aura, yet does not catch on that he is more than human. At lunch, Regis fails at using chopsticks. Meanwhile, Toshiro notices that Manabu is awestruck by Syra. Toshiro asks Reisel if he is free after school so they can play Cupid. M21 and Frankenstein discuss the new students and Reisel. Frankenstein explains that Reisel is a noble and the history of how nobles are beings with powers that protect humans. M21 makes the connection that Syra and Regis are also nobles. It is also shown that Toshiro broke his arm during one of the incidents, and not actually a car accident where he tried to save Manabu. Reisel had wiped his mind of the incident. Frankenstein comes home to Reisel having company over, said company being Syra, Regis, Toshiro, and Manabu. Frankenstein instantly notices the mess and organizes all of their snacks. Toshiro then proposes Regis and Syra stay with Reisel, much to Frankenstein's displeasure. Frankenstein plays along with what Reisel is okay with. Syra asks Frankenstein if there is anything she can help with, and notices a tattoo on M21's arm. She later tells Regis this and identifies it as something belonging to the Union, specifically experimental subjects. Regis then confronts M21 in private, explaining he dislikes men who abandon their humanity to gain power. He inquires about M21's knowledge of the recent events that took place. M21 attempts to play it off, but Regis persists by asking if it was done by the Union's orders. He explains his aim to regain the power that is far beyond human control, meaning what was in the coffin. When walking home after school, Toshiro is confronted by a group of bullies. They point out their interest in Syra, a pretty foreign woman. Before Toshiro realizes it, a knife is being held to Reisel's neck. M21 assures Regis that the ones who stole the coffin are already dead. Regis has yet to realize that the noblesse has already escaped the coffin. This results in a fight between the two. During the battle, Syra telepathically informs Regis about what is transpiring on her end. Toshiro has began a fight with a group of assailants that seem to be targeting him. Regis and M21 arrive to the fight, and Regis is taken aback by the way Toshiro fights so vehemently. M21 explains humans can fight when they have something driving them. M21 de-escalates the fight and sends the assailants running. Toshiro yells out to them to jump him when he is alone rather than when he is with his friends. On the walk home, M21 explains to Regis that humans do not need nobles anymore and that he is unsure what Regis is trying to protect. He states humans have changed and says that Regis should not trample over the human world. The two then devolve into a petty argument. M21 and Regis are still arguing over petty matters while seated around a table back at Frankenstein's home with Frankenstein, Reisel, and Syra. Frankenstein, in an attempt to lighten the mood, asks if anyone has requests for dinner, causing Reisel to ask for ramen. Regis is unable to tell when or if his brainwashing works on Reisel. He believes he has control of Frankenstein. Tao informs his team of the reports done on the incident. Meanwhile, a teammate points out it was clearly a battle between superpowered individuals. Tao mentions that the whereabouts of M21 and M24 are unknown. The team decides to apprehend them if they find them, assuming they are alive since they are not being confirmed as dead. Tashiro then assumes that Manabu likes guys more than girls as he notices that Manabu is extremely eager to be with Regis rather than Saira. Later, on the roof, Regis and M21 exchange banter and threats if one or the other steps out of line. That night, Manabu is doing security checks for his uncle while hanging out with Tashiro. He notices someone is trying to hack the server while he is on and barges back with a virus. Tao, who is doing the hacking, finds this to be fun and enjoys a playful exchange between them. He then goes on to double his hacking, and Manabu is unable to block everything Tao is doing. Tashiro enters the room with food and accidentally unplugs Manabu's computer, keeping him from protecting the server. Tao then stops his attack. Tao sends Manabu a message asking what happened, and Tashiro replies for him. Tashiro then believes Manabu is chatting with a girl. That doesn't last long as he learns Tao is a guy. Tashiro then comes to the conclusion Manabu is gay and vows to beat up anyone that messes with him for it. In that brief time, Tao manages to get everything he needed from the servers and finds surveillance footage of M21. Hammer and Shark are then tasked with capturing M21. At Frankenstein's home, Regis and M21 share another dispute. M21 reveals to Regis he is in human society to maintain a promise to an old friend. Frankenstein then orders everyone to clean up, except for Rizel. Regis then fusses about Rizel, not helping, causing him to start cleaning up too. Frankenstein dreads this. The next day, Frankenstein gives M21 a card that all his wages are being deposited in. M21 ponders his situation as he is just a modified human that was considered a failure, but is now working as a normal human. Shark and Hammer confront M21 while he is alone at night. Shark then provokes M21 by mocking M24. This morphs into an altercation between Shark and M21. Shark and Hammer are way too powerful for M21, and he is cornered. M21 sustains a large amount of damage from Shark. Regis and Saira appear behind M21, and Regis mocks Shark and Hammer's appearances. He knows from on sight that Hammer and Shark are not normal humans. Shark then charges at Regis, and M21 throws his body in front of Regis to protect him. Krantz then arrives and scolds Shark for trying to kill M21. M21 decides to cooperate with Krantz as it gives him a chance to learn his comrades and his own real names, leaving Regis to believe that M21 lied about his promise and he truly is on a mission. Manabu and Tao are at it again, with Manabu protecting the servers and Tao breaching them. Regis and Saira return home where Saira explains to Frankenstein that M21 left with his friends because he had some sort of mission. Frankenstein believes this and realizes that this may be troublesome for Rizel if true. M21 is interrogated by DA5 and realizes that they have no idea he betrayed the Union. They also believe M21 is on some sort of special mission where he cannot tell anyone what he is doing. M21 then makes a condition that Krantz agrees to. If M21 can learn more about his comrades and himself, then he will tell them everything they want to know. Manabu gets a message from Tao for an offline meetup. Tao confesses to hacking the server every day because he had fun going back and forth with Manabu and confides in him that he is surrounded by people that do not appreciate his talents. The two easily bond over the way they are disregarded for their talents. Meanwhile, Tashiro defends a foreigner being mugged. The foreigner being Takeo, who plays the part of not knowing Japan very well. They walk together briefly before Tashiro has to go to the director's home to hang out. Back at their hideout, Tao and Takeo discuss Tao possibly searching for Takeo's sister. It is revealed that Takeo's sister being held hostage by the Union is the only reason he is in the team. Takeo tells Tao to not bother with it and is emotionally unavailable to Tao's attempts of helping him. Shark threatens to kill M21, and Takeo has to stop him from going too far again. Shark then calls Takeo soft and says he killed everyone Takeo has spared in the past. Takeo draws his gun on Shark, not wanting to let him get away with it anymore. Tao tries to hold Takeo back. Shark even says that the Union has probably already killed Takeo's sister. He then adds that he is merely doing what Krantz orders him to do. This makes Takeo drop his weapon, distraught. Shark then goes after Regis, determined to leave no witnesses alive. Regis mocks Shark, stating there is no way a weakling like Shark can hurt him. A battle ensues and Shark determines Regis as the noblesse that escaped. Hammer then tosses Shark a pill that makes him transform. As Regis is about to defeat Shark, Hammer brings Tashiro and Manabu to drop them by his feet. He states that if Regis doesn't want anything to happen to them, he will cooperate. Regis reluctantly obeys. Shark then brings the kids and Regis to their hideout, unconscious and bound. Frankenstein praises Syra for helping with dinner. She then feels her mental connection with Regis gets severed. Regis awakens to see every one of the elite team around him with M21. He is reminded that if he tries anything, the kids will die. Tashiro awakes and wakes up Manabu. Tashiro recognizes Takeo and Manabu recognizes Tao. Manabu asks Tao what is going on, which causes Shark and Hammer to laugh at how Manabu calls Tao boss. Shark and Hammer explains all of this is happening because of M21. Cyrus sets out to recover Regis while Rizel and Frankenstein do the same. Shark continues to beat Tashiro. Tao and Takeo try to suggest that they do not need to go that far, but Krantz says they will be eliminated. While Hammer is getting food, he notices Syra entering the building. Syra requests that Hammer steps aside, but he barrages her with explosives instead. She retaliates by effortlessly slicing him across his chest. As Shark begins to choke Tashiro to death, M21 is left with an internal conflict of whether or not he should try to save the kids or learn his comrades' names. M21 then has a revelation that M24 will forgive him for trying to save the kids instead. Frankenstein and Rizel are then met with Takeo on the roof. Frankenstein urges Rizel to go ahead without him so he can fight Takeo. Regis breaks from his restraints and begins to fight Shark as M21 was rendered unable to fight. Krantz then takes a pill and kills Shark, absorbing his power. He reveals that D is only meant to magnify his power once a user gets used to taking it. Rizel then enters. Takeo threatens to kill Rizel, causing Frankenstein to release his true power. Below, Rizel demonstrates his mind control effortlessly by bringing Krantz down to the ground. Syra's battle with Hammer ensues. She summons her soul weapon, Death Scythe, and brings part of the building down on him before leaving. Frankenstein remarks that he has disobeyed his master and drives a spike through Takeo's side. He continues to overwhelm Takeo effortlessly. Takeo accepts this fate rather quickly and considers it to be punishment for all the innocent people that died because of him until a memory of his sister brings back his fighting spirit. He manages to resist Frankenstein's spears and grazes Frankenstein with a bullet. Krantz is no match for Rizel and orders Tao to take his drug so he can be absorbed. Tao reluctantly complies, believing this is his fate as a modified human. Manabu pleads for Rizel to save him. Inevitably, Frankenstein wins the battle, and as he is about to kill him, Syra appears. Frankenstein points out her soul weapon that signifies she is a high-ranking noble, as she notes he is not a normal human. Takeo and Syra have already met prior, so Takeo asks Syra to save Tashiro. Frankenstein decides to spare Takeo and tells him to apologize to Tashiro himself. Tao decides to resist Krantz to save the kids. Krantz then decides to absorb Tao as he is, causing Rizel to make Krantz freeze in place so Tao can escape his grip. Rizel tells Manabu and Tashiro not to beg him to help as they don't need to. Then, Rizel begins to bend the blood around him. Regis recognizes this ability to be extremely powerful. With this, Rizel takes Krantz out in seconds. M21 and Takeo awaken in the director's home. Takeo first asks about the kids and M21 assures him that they are fine and he can talk to Tao about it later. Rizel coughs up blood due to strain from the power he used. Frankenstein apologizes for using his power without Rizel's consent, but Rizel says that he doesn't need to worry about it and forgives him. At dinner, Tao raves about how good all of the food is. M21 and Takeo enter the room and Frankenstein invites them to sit and eat as well. M21 and Regis bicker back and forth as usual. While M21 is outside alone, Rizel approaches him, offering to release his true power briefly to prove that he is not weak. Meanwhile, Tao informs Takeo that their old team was basically fodder for Krantz to expand his power. Tao informs Takeo that he does not have a sister and that the Union has been tampering with his memories. This devastates Takeo, and Tao suggests they leave tomorrow to not be a burden. As they leave, M21 asks Frankenstein if Tao and Takeo can live with him, with Frankenstein assuring him that it is fine. Frankenstein asks Rizel about Regis and Syra's reactions to his power, with Rizel misunderstanding and responding about ramen flavors instead. Tashiro and Manabu are walking to school for the first time after the Dieg 5 incident. Tashiro complaining about not being popular with girls, with it immediately being displayed when they walk into the school grounds where the female students are flocking around M21. The The female students are excited to see Rizel, glaring at Tashiro when he greets him to his confusion. Watching them from the windows of a stairwell is Frankenstein, who has a flashback to Rizel, telling him that he likes how things are currently. This makes Frankenstein conclude that Rizel has already made his mystery decision. In class, Tashiro is constantly sighing about girls again, which makes Mr. Fedor wonder if he's going crazy. At lunch, the complaints from Tashiro only continue as he points out Rizel's fangirls. Manabu, in an attempt to help Tashiro, asks Rizel how Tashiro can be popular, though it only results in Tashiro saying any help will be useless after some of the female students collapse at Rizel's thinking response. When they find out Tashiro has a crush on Saira, they're impressed but still want to leave and only start helping when Rizel asks them to. Tao's first search brings up an outdated date plan to the disco. When Takeo tries to give example scenario, he can't complete it out of embarrassment, glaring at Tashiro when he complains and brings up how smooth Takeo's persona when they first met was. They then go to Frankenstein's office where they ask him if he's ever had trouble with women. Manabu and Tashiro are eager to hear what he has to say until it turns out he was just another natural at attracting girls and women. Frankenstein freezes in the middle of his boasting when Rizel takes a particularly loud sip of his tea. The next person they ask is Regis, who has no answer about Saira's preferences and refutes the possibility of them dating. M21 states that Regis wasn't going to be of help anyway, and they start their petty arguments as usual. Once more, when Rizel asks Regis to help, he kneels and agrees. In the library, Tashiro is sitting at a table with everyone so far except Frankenstein around him as Regis tells him to write Saira a letter. There is little progress on the love letter as Tashiro's attempts are too casual and everyone's suggestions are vetoed, with Tashiro giving up on writing it. He crumples up the lined paper and throws it without paying any attention, leading it to end up at Rizel's feet. Looking down from where he's standing reading a book, his expression shifts to a small smile. The next plan is a basketball game with the help of Manabu, the trio, Rizel, and Regis to show off Tashiro's skills. Mr. Fedor questions it walking in, but Regis uses mind control to make him go along with it. The attempt is a failure with Rizel not being good at basketball, M21 and Regis competing against each other as usual, and Takeo forgetting he was meant to help when at the end of the game he blocks Tashiro and scores the winning point for his team from across the court. Regis and Saira walk by, shocking Tashiro, with Regis saying not to make a mess if they come by to Frankenstein's house. Saira stops to return Tashiro's love letter, making him question who gave it to her when she answers it was on her desk. She also tells Tashiro that his emotions are a natural part of life, and there's nothing wrong with them, as well as that she thinks people are most charming when they're being themselves. This lifts the burden from Tashiro, and he blushes when she picks up his bag and gives it to him. As she walks away, Manabu asks if she smiled. At Frankenstein's house, all its occupants are gathered in the living room. When told that their memories will be erased, they're upset and Frankenstein explains this has happened before with a flashback to episode 0. Tashiro is emotional and argues against it with Regis and M21 explaining this is for their protection due to the danger of the Union. Manabu tears up and Tashiro asks Rizel if this is what he wants, with him answering that yes it is since everybody acted as they did because they wanted to. And Rizel erases their memories. The next day, Tashiro and Manabu are late again due to Tashiro waking up late. They greet everyone as usual. The throne room in Lucadonia is shown with the clan leaders gathered in front of Raskria. Jejudal appears in front of Yiran, with Frankenstein, Rizel, Regis, and Cyrus sensing his presence. And 21 Takeo and Tao ask Jejudal for his identification as nobody is allowed to enter the school without permission, to which Jejudal asks why they're here then and reveals his aura. Regis and Saira then appear in front of him kneeling and greet him, with Jejudal demanding an explanation for why there are modified humans present. This is Frankenstein question why he's bothering them at work, surprising Jejudal as they are clearly acquainted. Back in Lucadonia, in the throne room, the clan leaders they discuss Jejudal's departure and the possibility of Regis and Saira having met Rizel, who is believed to be a traitor by the Lucadonians. After the meeting, Koreas and Rudjuk are walking down a hall together. Rudjuk asks if Koreas was trying to defend Regis and Saira as he has affection for the two. He then says that as clan leaders they must prioritize serving the Lord, which Koreas doesn't take seriously. They are then approached by Rudjuk's younger brother, Rail Kersha, who asks about Saira but doesn't receive an answer as Rudjuk simply says that he should be referred to as clan leader, not brother. At Frankenstein's house, Jejudal talks to Rizel. He learns that Rizel has been asleep for the 820 years of his disappearance and tells Rizel about the changing of lords from the previous lord to Raskria, as well as the many changes that have occurred. Rizel and Frankenstein also learn about Rizel being considered a traitor. Jejudal asks Rizel to return to Lacedonia to prove himself innocent, but Rizel wants to stay in his idyllic life for a little longer. At the cafe that Matabu first met Tao at, 21, Regis, Syra Takeo, and Tao are all discussing the recent event. The modified human trio learn about clan leaders, discuss Regis' relation to Jejudal, and have a tangent about hairstyles. Everyone also wonders about the relation between Frankenstein and Jejudal, with all of them unsure of Frankenstein's species. Back at Frankenstein's house, Jejudal is shown to be staying there for his visit. He tells Frankenstein that he still doesn't trust him due to all the nobles he killed in the past. It starts with Frankenstein having 3 nobles who are part of the Central Order of Knights chained up in a gloomy building. It's revealed that he's experimenting on nobles and is called the Noble Hunter. Furthermore, his powers and Dark Spear were with him before he ever met Rizel. Jejudal and Rhaegar Kersha enter the throne room to see the previous lord trying to convince Rizel to move in with him. He gives up but reminds Rizel that he cares for him and to visit occasionally, sighing and calling him antisocial when he leaves. Jejudal attempts to admonish the lord, but he shuts it down, asking why they've come. Jejudal reports about Frankenstein and that he's a human who's become powerful in an unknown way, so they can't let him roam free. The Lord then sends the two to capture Frankenstein alive as he wants to talk to him. A group of Central Knights attempt to corner Frankenstein by flushing him out with explosives, chasing him to a cliff. Frankenstein defeats them easily by barraging them with Dark Spear. At this point, Jejudal enters, telling the Knights to retreat, and introduces himself. Rhaegar also introduces himself, appearing behind Frankenstein, which surprises him. They ask Frankenstein to come with them, which he refuses to do. Rhaegar asks Jejudal to stand back and let him fight as he already has an heir, and because he believes it to be a stain on their pride if 2 clan leaders are needed to win. The fight is obviously challenging as Rhaegar decides to summon his sole weapon, Cardus, which excites Frankenstein and leads to him using Dark Spear to a heavier extent. Jejudal and Rhaegar are surprised by Frankenstein's power, which the latter takes insult to, asking why humans can't hunt nobles when nobles do it freely. The 2 clan leaders are taken aback, Rhaegar saying they don't form blood pacts just because, but Frankenstein responds that there are many nobles who treat humans like toys. As Frankenstein's anger grows, he uses Dark Spear more, which backfires as it starts to consume him. This has Jejudal stepping in with his sole weapon, Regisus, to prevent a catastrophe. In the aftermath, Frankenstein manages to escape. His trails of blood leads to the Noblesse estate where he takes and wears one of Rizel's shirts. Frankenstein walks through the empty estate until he comes upon Rizel, who is staring out of a window, but turns around to look at him. Frankenstein attempts to trick Rizel into thinking he's a new employee, which fails as Rizel lives alone. Jejudal and Rhaegar then arrive, kneeling and explaining that the Lord has ordered them to bring Frankenstein to him. Rizel, seeing Frankenstein's blood seeping through his shirt, uses his powers to change Frankenstein's clothes and says they can't take him as he works in the estate. Frankenstein wonders who Rizel is when the clan leaders listen and leave. 5 years after that, Frankenstein and Rhaegar are sparring when Dark Spear starts consuming Frankenstein. Dark Spear attacks Rhaegar though he is unharmed, while Frankenstein falls to his knees, and Rhaegar holds out his hand to help him up, which he takes. Meanwhile, Jejudal tells Rizel that he still thinks Frankenstein is dangerous, and to at least make him visit the Lord. At night, Frankenstein pours Rizel some tea and asks if he was staring out the window the whole day again, learning that the last time Rizel left the estate was when he visited the Lord before Frankenstein even arrived. He also asks what Rizel is always looking at. In the day, Frankenstein finally goes to meet the Lord and passes by some hooded nobles who obviously don't like him, including Uruk-hai Egwene. In the throne room, the Lord talks with Frankenstein about various matters like his relation to Rizel, which leads to him lamenting about Rizel not acting close with him. He also asks Frankenstein why he hasn't formed a blood pact with Rizel yet, as well as his role as noblesse. Frankenstein is taken aback by the Lord's demeanor. The scene then shows a group of hooded nobles complaining about Frankenstein while Jejudal, Rhaegar, and Uruk-hai watch. When the Lord says he wishes Frankenstein and Rizel would form a blood pact, Uruk-hai is incensed with Jejudal, then stepping in to also object in a more reasonable manner. Some other day, Frankenstein is walking through the castle's hallway when he sees Jejudal. The The Lord has resorted to using Frankenstein to send Rizel messages, despite never getting a reply. Frankenstein then asks Jejudal to spar with him, which he refuses, warning Frankenstein to not cause Rizel any trouble after. Urokai then arrives with two hooded flunkies and tells Frankenstein he'll spar with him, being openly hostile and rude all the while. In a coliseum, Frankenstein and Urokai are fighting with Jejudal and Rhaegar spectating. Urokai appears to be stronger even after Frankenstein summons Dark Spear, but Rhaegar says that Frankenstein's holding back as he doesn't want Dark Spear to go berserk. Frankenstein realizes that Urokai is seemingly jealous of the attention he receives from Rizel, with a twisted manner that it manifests in angering him into going berserk. It then starts to rain, and Urokai is shown with a heavily bleeding eye wound while Frankenstein has lost all reason to Dark Spear. Jejudal and Rhaegar step in against Urokai's protests, saying that no matter how hard he tries, he won't be able to beat Frankenstein. Frankenstein unleashes a large attack, amidst which a blinding blue-white light pillar appears. As the dust abates, the Lord and Rizel are shown to have arrived and are back-to-back. The Lord asks what they are to do with Urokai, asking Rizel to pass his judgment. Rizel approaches Frankenstein, blocking his attack, though he gets a cut on his cheek. Using the blood from his cut, Rizel creates a blood field to subdue Frankenstein, and his blood wings appear. In the aftermath, he reaches out to Frankenstein's cheek where he's also bleeding and brings his thumb to smear the blood against his own lips. There is a zoom into Frankenstein's eye, and then he is shown floating in a beige void where he hears Rizel's voice. Seeing him, Frankenstein reaches out to him. Then back in the real world, he's returned to normal and collapses. Seeing all this, the Lord asks Rizel if this is his decision. Frankenstein wakes up in a large bed, bandaged. Then, dressed as he usually is, he goes to see Rizel, who informs him that they must go see the Lord together. Rizel then asks for some tea, coughing up blood as Frankenstein leaves. Pondering this and what happened in the kitchen, Frankenstein ends up spilling the tea he's pouring. Then, when he gives Rizel a cup of tea, it's shown that he cut his wrist and added some of his blood to it. After taking a sip, Rizel asks if he agrees to the blood pact, and Frankenstein does, kneeling and calling Rizel master. This is where the flashback ends. Regis, Syra, Takeo, and Tao are playing a card game as the others watch. Jejudal says that Rizel has changed, with Frankenstein correcting him, saying that it was the environment around Rizel that changed, not he himself. At the balcony, Jejudal informs Regis and Syra that he's returning to Lucadonia. He tells Regis to live at the household until he has to take up his duties, and asks Syra to look after him. Back in the throne room in Lucadonia, Jejudal reports to Lord Raskria that Regis and Syra were mistaken in their report about possibly having met Noble. She threatens to read his mind, and when he refutes her, she says she'll do it to Syra, who can't resist her power instead. She then orders Rudjuk to go get Syra and put Jejudal in prison, which shocks all of the clan leaders. Rael then enters despite only clan leaders being allowed entry, asking to be sent to retrieve Syra instead. Raskria allows this, creating a piece of paper with her order on it out of thin air. Rael arrives in Tokyo, Japan. In free study period, Tashiro attempts to get Regis to join a paper airplane flying contest. Regis is surprised when not only Manabu, but also Rizel and Syra are taking part. M21, Takeo, and Tao are too distracted by a group of female students to notice Rael arriving at Yiran. He uses mind control over the whole school, causing Rizel, Regis, and Syra to notice his presence. Meanwhile, Regis and Syra tell Rizel they'll deal with the matter. The trio confront Rael, who realizes they're modified humans, and stabs M21 in the back with his hand. Rael is disgusted by them, but before they can fight, Regis and Syra step in. Ignoring Regis, Rael is excited to see Syra and tells her he's come to bring her back to Lucadonia. He hasn't seen her since he proposed to her 10 years ago. He leaves when Syra tells him to, though not before whispering in her ear that he doesn't want to make her sad after saying she should listen to him. Regis asks Syra if Rael said anything to her, but Takeo and Tao's worry for M21 cuts him off. Back at Frankenstein's house, M21 is recuperating in an experimental pod, while the rest of the household are gathered telling Frankenstein what happened. In Frankenstein's lab, Takeo and Tao undergo a health checkup as Frankenstein is worried about the Union's modification style. They ask Frankenstein how M21 is, to which the answer is almost fully healed as he has fast regeneration owing from when Rizel showed him what he'd be like at full power. Takeo and Tao ask Frankenstein to help them get stronger as they wish to be able to protect their comrades. Naturally, Frankenstein agrees. At the balcony, Syra approaches Regis. He speculates about Rael's reasoning for his actions, which could be discontent about his position and the possibility of taking over the Lawyered clan. Regis then tells Syra that she's like family, so he won't let Rael do whatever he wants. Not telling